Hey Siri, give me a list of Photoshop alternatives.
There are Photoshop alternatives? I thought Photoshop was the only industry
Hey Google,
standard.
give me a
Hey,
list of
don't ignore
Photoshop
me, you
alternatives.
bastard.
Here's the list of Photoshop alternatives.
The list of Photoshop alternatives is long, but there's not any actual competitor of Photoshop. So in this video, I'll be making the same thumbnail in not every, but a lot of different photo editing software. This video is highly inspired by Elliot and Finzar. You can check their links in the description below. So there are some rules for this challenge. I'm not going to make literally the same thumbnail in every software because that can end up getting boring very quickly. What I actually need to do is test the features and tools in every software. That's where our rule will come in. Rule number 1, I have to follow this composition. A subject will be in the center and then a background behind it. Rule number 2, I must cut out the subject manually. I can't use a PNG and I can't use AI, select subject or remove BG. So I'll get started with Photoshop first. This guy in glasses is our subject here. I'll cut him out using pen tool, then refine his hair. Rule number 3, I must use a background that matches the vibe of the subject and try to blend them as close as possible. Our guy looks like a nerd, so I decided on this library background. Then I did some usual adjustments like adjusting their brightness, contrast, color and some dodge and burn, which I finished off with a final Canva raw filter. I gave it a title, I read a book every day for an year. And in order to match the thumbnail more with the title, I added some text and here's the final result. The next software I'm going to use is Affinity Photo 2 on the iPad. If you guys didn't know, this is the software that I use for my designs. It is my favorite software. For this one, the subject I have is a medieval knight. I cut it out using pen tool and decided on this deforestation background. After that, I did the usual brightness and color adjustments. I added some text, drew an arrow and gave it a title. Photoshop and Affinity are my game, and I have plenty of experience in them. So everything went smoothly so far. I'm still confident about other softwares too because I'm a big believer in skills over tools. But if the tools are actually very bad, it can get very frustrating, which is exactly what happened in the next software, Gimp. Gimp is apparently a very popular and free Photoshop alternative. I heard about it from a fellow designer last year. I was easily able to create a document in it and import the subject, but moving and scaling it was a disaster and took me a while to figure it out. I was easily able to cut the subject out with the pen tool, but I couldn't find a tool to refine the selection or mask for the hair, so I had to use the eraser and brush for that. I added a curves adjustment to the subject which was kind of destructive, then I added a background. My experience with Gimp was not smooth, especially with the shortcut keys. It was not intuitive at all. I didn't want to spend any more time here, so I added a text and gave this thumbnail a title and call it a day. I'm never using Gimp again. The next software on the list is Photopea, and the best thing about it is you don't even have to download it. It's online on the web. I have some experience with Photopea from the time when I didn't have a desktop. It is pretty identical to Photoshop, which is amazing. So I imported my subject in Photopea and cut it out using pen tool. Again, I couldn't find any refining tool for the hair, so I just used a brush and eraser. Then the usual added a background, some adjustments, dodging and burning, and a final camera raw filter. Photopea is definitely the best free Photoshop alternative. Here's the final result. Now the next software on the list is the only competitor of Photoshop, which can drive Adobe out of the business. Its name is Canva. After smoothly creating a document and importing my subject in Canva, I was immediately confronted with the rule number 2 of this challenge. I couldn't find anything close to mask selection, eraser or pen tool. I looked up on Google but couldn't find any help and had to end up watching a tutorial on YouTube. After installing a bunch of these BG removers, I realized all of them were automatic AI. I gave in and broke the second rule, but I didn't stop there. I finished the thumbnail by adding the background, doing some adjustment and a classic text and arrow. The next software is CorelDRAW. I've seen a fellow designer use this software for designing logos instead of Illustrator. I'm not sure how useful it will be for photo editing though. I was easily able to create a document and import the subject. I used pen tool to cut the subject out and then added a background and some usual adjustments and then gave it a title. It was different and unique from other softwares. Not the best, but quite a decent experience. For the next one, I went back to my iPad and tried some apps there, starting with Ivy's Paint X. Ivy's Paint X is a drawing software and I have some experience in it as well. I instantly got used to the UI and features. After importing the subject, I cut him out using a brush because there's no pen tool here I think. After cutting him out, I did the usual, added a background, some adjustments, some dodging and burning, and this was the final. It's really a great software. A lot of features are behind a paywall though. I use only the free version and it's still great. The next software in the list is Clip Studio Paint. It's a major competitor of Photoshop when it comes to drawing and painting. I installed the free trial and got into it. I was instantly overwhelmed by the UI, but was easily able to create a document and import the subject. The pen tool here was like a vector brush, so I drew an outline around the subject and adjusted the angle points of the path to match the outline of the subject. After cutting the subject out, I did the usual, added a background and the usual adjustments, dodging and burning, etc. It was a bit tedious, but I'm happy with the result. The next software I used is the OG, Pixlr. After importing the subject, I cut him out using the brush tool, then again the usual background and adjustment. I noticed the lens flare effect and I couldn't resist using it. The next software is Procreate, which is my all-time favorite drawing software. I imported the subject and cut him out using lasso tool. I refined the hair using brush and eraser, added a background, and after some adjustments, I painted some highlights. And here's the final. I think it came out pretty cool. Talking about drawing and painting softwares, I remember one of my favorite artists uses Krita. So I went back to my desktop and installed Krita. The promotional art on the header and banner of Krita was so good I instantly fell in love with it. I was easily able to create a document and import the subject. I had some difficulty understanding the transform because you actually have to create a transform mask here and move that. After understanding the transform, I cut the subject out with the help of pen tool and refined the hair with brushes and erasers. One thing I must mention though, the pen tool I used in Krita was the best experience I have ever had in using pen tool in all the softwares. It was even better than Photoshop and Affinity. Then again I did the usual, added a background, some adjustments, dodging and burning, etc. One thing was a problem though. After exporting the final image, it looked desaturated compared to how it looked in the app. I tried changing different color profiles in the document and in export settings, but I couldn't get it right, which is a bummer. But nonetheless, Krita, great software, highly recommended. The next software I use is Pixelmator Pro, which was recently acquired by Apple. Its UI looks very clean and minimal and navigating around it felt very smooth. But there was a problem. You see in Photoshop or any other software when you are using a pen tool, if you do undo, you'll go one node back. But in Pixelmator Pro, in order to go one node back, you have to click delete. I didn't know that and had to go a node back, so I did undo and lost my pen tool progression and I had to do it all over from the beginning again, which was painful. After cutting the subject out, I did the usual again, added a background and the usual adjustments. Pixelmator Pro is definitely a great app but not an ideal for me or complex projects. It also has selection refining tool which is a plus. Since I am on Mac, I installed a macOS alternative of MS Paint, but it won't even let me import an image here, so it's out of the game and I'll end my suffering here. It's very biased, but if you are looking for a Photoshop alternative, Affinity is the way to go. And for completely free users, Photopea is the way to go. These are the only two softwares which are closest to Photoshop and even better in some areas. Not any of the softwares has generative fill though, which is the biggest advantage of Photoshop. Other than Photoshop, you can still try all the softwares completely for free and see for yourself whichever works best for you. With this, I'm ending the video here. I'll see you soon.